Good morning. So, lesson 2.08 is all about ions. So we're going to learn what that ion is, and then kind of talk about how that affects your calculation of electrons within an atom. So just a quick review before we get started. If you recall, we talked earlier about how atomic number and atomic mass can be used to calculate certain things. So like atomic number gives us our number of protons, and atomic mass is from the protons plus neutrons. And then for electrons, we just talked about how to deal with neutral atoms. All right, so a hint, ions going to have something to do with these electrons. But these are something to remember. Your atomic number is always equal to your protons. Your atomic mass is protons plus neutrons. That's not going to change here. So quick review. Hopefully you know these off the top of your head, but I'm just going to give you a second to think these through. But I always remember proton and positive start with the same value. All right, and then I'm actually going to skip electron because I also remember that neutron sounds a lot like the word neutral, which means none or like not involved or zero. All right, and then the electron is the one with the negative charge. So another quick kind of review sort of thing here is when an atom is neutral, how does the number of protons relate to the number of electrons? All right, so if you think about that word neutral, that means that overall the atom has zero charge. All right, so neutral is zero charge. All right, so if we're putting in positive things and negative things, how do they have to relate to each other so that overall we get zero? All right, hopefully you're thinking, oh, well, we just need the same amount of each. If we've got 5 protons, we need 5 electrons. That way we have the same amount of positive and negative, and they'll cancel each other out. All right, so when an atom is neutral, protons are equal to the number of electrons. All right, you can also think that your atomic number tells you both protons and electrons. Now, what happens when an atom's not neutral? So in reactions, we'll get into these in Unit 4, but in certain reactions, our atoms need to either gain or lose electrons. All right, they might give away some of their electrons or they might gain extra ones. And when they do this, we call them an ion. All right, so there's our topic for today is ions. It's these atoms that gain or lose electrons. So, what do you think happens to your atom if these protons and neutrons are not equal in number? Like, let's say that we have 5 protons but 6 electrons. What's going to happen to that atom? All right, you can think of this as being plus 5 and negative 6. If you combine those together, is that atom still going to be neutral? No, it's going to be negative 1. All right, so ions have a charge, or they are not neutral. Okay, so what I want you to do is think about how to combine these sorts of things, to combine what we've talked about on this slide, the fact that, ions are elements that either give up or gain electrons. Because of that, they're not going to be neutral. Like, turn that into a definition of your own. All right, so obviously you can't write on here because you're watching this, but on a piece of paper, jot it down. How would you define an ion? What's going on when we have an atom that becomes an ion? All right, pause the video if you need some more time to get your definition written out, and I'm going to throw what I think would be a complete definition here. So, ions are charged atoms that have either gained or lost electrons. All right, so this covers all the different aspects that you need to know in relation to an ion. It's going to have a charge, and that charge comes from a change in its electrons. I'm going to underline that part right there. This is super, super, super important. All right, it's just the electrons that are changing, nothing else. All right, proton number stays the same, neutron number stays the same. Ions have a charge because they either got extra electrons or they lost electrons. Okay. So we've got some definitions here. So a cation we use to describe a positively charged ion. Anion we use to describe a negatively charged ion. So let's think about kind of what this means. All right, so starting from, let's say, a neutral lithium. All right, so lithium has 3 protons and 3 electrons when it's in its neutral state. All right, you can think of that as +3 and -3. Now, what can we do to lithium's electrons? Or this is the important part here. Never, ever, ever, ever change the number of protons, because if you do that, then it becomes a different element on the periodic table. All right? So we had to stay in lithium, so the 3 protons, that's fixed. All right? I can't change that one. But lithium has the option of either giving up some electrons or losing some electrons to become positive. So how can I combine +3 with a negative number and end up with a positive value? All right, should I gain electrons or lose them? All right, if you're not sure, you can always try both ways. I know some of you are probably screaming at the computer screen like, do this, do this. But if you're not sure, try both. All right, if we lose an electron, that would be a -2 charge. If we gain an electron, that would be that would be -4. All right, so if we gain an electron, we'll have 2. If we lose an electron, we'll have 2 of them. If we gain an electron, we'll have 4 of them. Which one of those numbers added to +3 would give you an overall positive value? Hopefully you're seeing that these give you +1. The other version would give you -1. All right, so a positively charged ion loses electrons. All right, so that E to the negative sign is an abbreviation for electron. Then conversely, let's think about anions. So something I know forms an anion is fluorine. All right, so fluorine, if you look it up, has an atomic number of 9, which means when it's neutral, we're going to have 9 protons, 9 electrons. All right, but it forms a negative charge. All right, so at neutral, we have +9 and -9. Now, how are we going to get a negative overall charge out of this? This one's usually a little bit easier to see, but again, you can try it both ways. All right, if I remove an electron, I'd only have 8, so there'd be that -8 charge. If I add an electron, there'd be 10, so a -10 charge. All right, and the one that ends up, when I combine them, giving me a negative charge is this version. All right, so if it's negatively charged, you gain electrons. All right. Now, one thing just to help you in terms of remembering these vocabulary words, cation and anion. So you guys all know that I have cats at home, and something I use to remember this. Cats are positive. All right, so a little play on the word positive there. Cats have paws, so cats are positive. Cations are positive. All right, so that'll just help you remember that cation goes with positively charged ions, which means you lose electrons. And then anions have nothing to do with cats or paws, so that's the negatively charged one. And when you're negatively charged, you gain electrons. So if it makes sense and everything is sunk in, filling in these blanks should be pretty easy. If you're still kind of struggling with this idea, in class, our next live class, we are going to practice, doing some calculations, determining how many electrons exist based on a given charge on an atom. All right, so don't worry, you will get more exposure to this, but this is just kind of the big basic summary. All right, so if you lose an electron, the ion is, all right, if you're ever not sure, just sit there and be like, okay, well, if I start out neutral, I'm going to have 5 protons, 5 electrons, so +5, -5. Then let's remove one of those electrons. That's going to make it -4. +5 and -4 is positive. All right, and then positive could be pronounced funny as positive, and I know cats have paws, so cation. All right, likewise, if I gain an electron, all right, then again, start out neutral. We got 5 and 5, so +5, -5. If I add an electron, if I gain an extra one, make that -6, then my overall charge will be negative. Because -6 plus +5 would be -1. And then negative doesn't have any tie to a cat, so that's the anion. Hopefully this is sinking in a bit, but no, we will practice more of this.